Welcome to In Such a Time, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. Each week, Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Landi explore the moments, questions, and ideas that shape who we are and who we aspire to be. And now for this week's conversation.
Welcome back to In Such a Time. I'm Rabbi Jaffe alongside Rabbi Landi, and today we're going to be talking about the world of fashion and appearance and how rabbi and clergy are judged by how they present themselves and to what degree that's fair or unfair. And I was going to start with a bit of an observation, then turn it over to you if that's okay.
Please, that's perfect.
I was thinking that for men, we have an easier time being judged physically as clergy than women do, specifically as rabbis. And I think part of that is because there is a stereotype of what rabbis classically have looked like. And that is usually an old, bearded, perhaps hunched over man. And that if that is the line that we're being measured against, then anything better than that is seen as an improvement. And so there are rather low expectations when it comes to rabbis and how we present ourselves. But for women, since there is no equivalent, since the female rabbi is a modern invention, then what does that mean that you don't have the same stereotype to fall back on? And do you think it's a fair observation that women perhaps have greater challenges in being observed by how they present themselves physically to their congregations than men do?
Whoa. Okay. I feel like there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
It was kind of loaded in some ways, but I'll give an example from when I used to live in Israel. I used to get calls all the time that we're really into the way that you do things. So can you prepare our child for a bar mitzvah? Can you prepare us for a wedding? But then for the actual ceremony, I was like, no, I can't. I actually can't be a part of helping you do that. That goes against everything I believe in. And they said, but like for the nirut, for like the way that it appears to our family, we want to do it right. I said, okay, so I'm sorry, you're gonna have to figure that out.
Right.
I guess I don't spend a lot of time other than when people are asking me if I can turn myself into a man or find a man for them to do a ceremony, which happens less to me these days. I don't think I spend a great deal of time comparing myself to male rabbis in terms of presentation. I do think that it's not always easy for a woman to be in a position of power because I'm not saying I have such great power, but to be in a leadership role, because I think that we are sometimes we are judged in ways that our male counterparts are not always judged, just as you said. Since coming to this community, I have thought about how I present. Do I need to dress up more? Do I need to invest more in my clothes and my hair, in the way that I exercise, and what do I need to do in order to be the rabbi that people need me to be? And I think that those are kind of strange questions. I certainly do get comments about the way I present and the clothes that I wear. And, in some ways I entertain it and I'm a part of that conversation, and that's also an internal dialogue that exists within me. On the other hand, it makes me really uncomfortable because I'm not a rabbi for fashion reasons
Right.
at all. So I guess I could go on and on. Like we started and I didn't think I'd have a lot to say about it, and I realized I have a lot to say about this. So to be continued, but what are your thoughts?
I've spoken with many female colleagues, and I've heard stories of at the service following at the oneg, a congregant going up to a female rabbi and with all of the best intentions, asking them if they'd like to go shopping together to work on their wardrobe, getting them things that maybe are going to fit them a little bit better, commenting on their shoes, asking them if they want to go shoe shopping, or perhaps even as a gift, giving them a nicer pair of shoes or nicer clothing that are more befitting. And I've heard this from female colleagues, mostly from the perspective of feeling offended by that in the moment of why am I being objectified by what I wear? There's the schlumpy male rabbi standing next to me and you would never do the same thing to him. And I was mentioning to you that years ago, back living in San Francisco, they had Jewish Heritage Night at the San Francisco Giants game. And actually, our clergy team, we played Take Me Out to the Ball game, me on ukulele, of course, at the seventh inning stretch of the baseball game, and they gave out bobbleheads, and the bobbleheads was for Jewish Heritage Night was of this little old hunched over man with a white beard. And especially in San Francisco, which is such a diverse community, which does not have a large Orthodox population, it felt so stereotypical. Like, this is what you're basically making a mockery of Jews in this way, caricature, and that's really what you think of us. But I have thought, as being again, throughout my career as a rabbi, people are often, they greet me as though they are surprised that I don't look older and more disheveled. And I think I have that low bar as a benefit in my back pocket at all times.
You know, I've been thinking about kind of what the purpose of clothes are in general. I mean, besides for covering our body. But the Torah gives a lot of attention to the garments of the priests, of the Kohanim. And there's so much attention given to what they wear when they're in a moment of duty, serving the community, when they're performing ritual. And the idea is that sometimes, even if you don't have the internal whereabout to serve and be in that moment, your clothes kind of remind you of what you're doing and who you are. When I put on my talit, I certainly remember what I'm there for and get into a certain space. The Kohanim had these beautiful garments and vestments and these breastplates with gems. Yeah. But the word for clothing in Hebrew is beged, and beged, it's bet gimel dalet. Whoever's learning Hebrew, that is the root, and that's also the same root as bagad, as betrayal.
Bagad knew, like you say, on Yom Kippur.
Yes, and so that's kind of a play on words. Like, our clothes make us sometimes act in a way that we are not necessarily feeling inside. And it allows us sometimes a little bit of protection to play the role that we want, to wear the clothes for the job that you want. It also allows us to get into, I think, a ritual space. And also clothes, I think, totally betray us. They make us think that our guiding principles and values are something that they're not. These are things that I think about all the time when I buy clothes for myself, when I buy clothes for my kids. What's the message that I'm trying to, first of all, give myself? I'll admit, I almost only buy secondhand clothing for my children as a value, and also for pricing, because I think that it's important that we have respect for our planet.
That's great. Good luck with your teen years.
We're not there yet. And absolutely, we are already there, and we've thought about it and we talk about it. But the way that you present also has to be indicative of who you are inside.
I love that. And I want to build off of it, that so much of what the Kohanim are wearing, the Umim and the Thurim and the ephod and all of these vestments, there's all of this parshanut about this, but how do we understand it? So much of it is, perhaps, is it for the priests to remind themselves of who they are, the Umim and the Thurim with all of the tribes on them? Is this so that they can be observed elsewhere and let people know, almost like when you wear a police uniform or a doctor's coat, that it's a way of informing the people around you of your role and your function in society? Is it something that's much more pragmatic, like the bells on the bottom of the dress of the priest, that you would know where they were at all times, and when they were walking, they had to be accountable that way? I think it brings us to clothing, to the idea of, is clothing there to separate us and distinguish us as different? And we here at the synagogue talk very much about how we've tried to take away a lot of the things that make us feel separate or different. There was a time period in which synagogues were built with tall bimas where the rabbi was up on top, and the rabbi wore very different, distinct clothing and robes and things that would feel different. And there's been a real move towards making it much less formal, much more approachable. And so we've taken away a lot of those things along the way. And so it reminds me of when we think about what we wear, it's also a way of stating our relationship to the people to whom we pastor. This past weekend, you and I co-officiated at a lovely, very nice black tie wedding in the city. I don't wear a tuxedo when I'm doing a wedding because I feel like,
Do I?
right, thank you. I feel like as a rabbi, that's not my function. A tuxedo is something for someone who's going out to a soiree, to a dinner event, and I'm there doing something different. So I want to wear a suit. At the same time, as we've discussed to great length here at the synagogue years ago, we got rid of high holiday robes because feeling as though it's something that makes us feel distant from the congregants and is something that is also not indigenous to Jewish practice, and wanting to wear instead the talit or a kittel. That's the Ashkenazi garment that you wear usually on Yom Kippur. But I know also for women that there's sometimes a real comfort in wearing a robe in that it covers you and makes you less susceptible to judgment around what you have to wear around the holidays.
Yeah, I feel that every time we come around to the high holidays, I have to think about, what did I wear last year? What am I going to wear this year? Does it fit right? Is this the message that I want to be sending? I mean, I think a lot about all those things, which I'm sure everybody does who, lives in the world. A part of me would really like robes. It would take a lot of that prep work and the thought, which I don't think is inherently sacred, out of that. I think when you get to the high holidays, the rabbi is supposed to be modeling for the community. Like, we're in a place that's not necessarily thinking about what our outside looks like, but what our inside feels like and looks like, and the work that needs to be done, and having to really fixate, which I'm not the only one. I'm in a female clergy Facebook group where there's a lot of discussion about it. What is the right minun? That's the Hebrew word for like measurement. How much should you be thinking about this? Because I think I might be contradicting a little bit what I said at the beginning. I was saying I don't think about gender roles at all. No, I think a lot about gender roles. I usually start with a no when I get to a yes. That there is a different standard for sure. Women have to, whether we like it or not, I think we have to prove a little bit more. And if you present a certain way, it makes it a little bit easier to do that. I'm going to go away from the body right now and go now to my head. When I was an earlier rabbi and a rabbinical student, when I would be in a prayer setting, I'd wear a kippah. That felt right to me. And I also kind of struggled with that, especially living in Israel, where that is a very strange thing to do. Women do not wear kippot.
Off-putting to
It's
many.
very off-putting. It's very unfeminine. You're making a statement.
Extreme.
Yeah, it's extreme, and you're usually making a statement about your gender or your sexual identity and
your politics, even.
Your politics, right?
Yeah.
And so I wore a kippah that kind of looked like an Orthodox woman's kippah, and that kind of was my way of navigating it. I never wore headbands in Israel because headbands are for a specific religious demographic, and I never wanted to present myself as being of that religious demographic, so people would think I am when I'm not. Coming to America, I'm coming to Bethel, I replaced my kippah with headbands again because it doesn't hold the same, it's not as loaded in the same way. And so for me, this feels more in line with myself, my religious practice, my sense of fashion, than a kippah does. On the other hand, wearing a kippah is a statement about your feminist leadership and about your leadership in general and about your Judaism. So, these ideas are constantly on my mind. And I also am like slightly embarrassed to be putting in this much thought about physical presentation.
When the high holidays come around, do you feel pressure to go shopping for a new outfit and something that's going to be observed by the congregation, or do you feel comfortable taking something out of the closet?
So this is another Jewish concept, is hidur mitzvah, like beautifying a mitzvah. And so I like getting new clothes for Chagim, for holidays in general, because that is saying something about the preparation for the holiday that makes me feel excited about the holiday, is to get something new and making sure that my kids have something new, not secondhand for the holidays or high holidays. That is definitely that is very intentional. Uh, I have gone back into my closet and worn things of days yore, but I this is definitely on my mind leading up to it. Being respectful of myself, being respectful of the ethos and the feeling of the community, what's going to be comfortable, what's yeah, all of the things together. And then at the end, I just put my big tallit over all of it, and no one sees anything.
I have so much to comment on. The first is that
Please.
I love this idea of what translates from the US to Israel and how what we wear may be observed very differently. I wear a kippah sruga, a woven kippah.
Yeah.
I often wear flip-flops or sandals. I often wear, when I'm in Israel, especially t-shirt and shorts, and I look like a religious Zionist.
Yeah.
And for those listening, there's a strong overlap there with the settler movement as well. And
To some extent, yeah.
I walk around, especially, with the beard that I have like this and flip-flops and kippah sruga, and people think that I'm like a Ben Gvir Smotrich sort of. I've had comments to me about this, about that I'm from like the Gush, or as a area of
You don't really
settlement.
keep high enough on your
High
head.
or
Like,
to the side. I need it to the side, exactly. When I was graduating seminary, as you see, I remember distinctly feeling as though there was a hierarchy, and we talked about this a bit beforehand, that as a married heterosexual male rabbi with the huge plus of being able to play the guitar, that was a highly desirous profile to have coming out looking for a job, more so than a unmarried male, because then you have to worry about dating, dating in the community and such, more than a married female, and I'll explain to you why in a moment, and more than a married homosexual rabbi. And I think that's not to say that the Jewish community is biased or bigoted or anti-LGBTQ, but rather that there's sort of a norm in synagogue life, that let's say you've got a rabbi and a cantor at a synagogue, and the rabbi and the cantor are both men. Okay, like that's kind of normal. If you have a man and a woman, it's great. It's normal. Two women, oh, feminist synagogue now. I don't know if that's they're going to make the same sort of interpretations, maybe what people make of you based on if we're wearing a kippah in Israel. That this must be a political statement by the congregation to have multiple or all female clergy. Same thing if you have two LGBTQ clergy at your synagogue, it will be thought of as an LGBTQ synagogue. Not that that's a bad thing, by the way. And I wonder how much this is shifting these days, because as the Reform rabbinate becomes more and more weighted towards female clergy, as well as more and more towards LGBTQ clergy, I think there's going to have to be a shifting in how that's perceived by congregations. And I think that's already somewhat underway these days. I'm not sure if having an all-female clergy necessarily booked like narrows down the feeling of that means it must be a feminist synagogue, or even what that means. But I remember definitely feeling that way when I was graduating from seminary. What was it like from you coming out from Israel, and did your status as being a female rabbi, a female married rabbi, a female rabbi with equal feet in the American and in the Israeli community, how did that work for you?
It's going to be hard to translate all of the idiosyncrasies of Israel at this moment,
Yeah.
because being a Reform rabbi gets you a lot of flack. Being a woman rabbi gets you a lot of flack. Being a young woman rabbi gets you a lot of flack. Being an American, you're American. I mean, there's just so many.
Right.
There's a lot of things to unpack there. I'm so happy that I don't have to deal with that anymore. We heard Anna Kislansky of the head of the Reform Movement speak last week, the two of us, and she was talking about still the gender disparities, and I kind of found myself rolling my eyes like, oh, when are we going to be over this already? I mean, and I know it's a long fight, and I'm so proud of my Reform colleagues in Israel male, female alike, who are doing the important work of making this kind of Judaism legitimate, making feminist Judaism legitimate. But I'm also going to contradict myself right now. I hate being called a female rabbi. I am not a female rabbi. I'm a woman and I'm a rabbi, but I'm not a female rabbi. No one would ever call you a male rabbi.
If not.
And I have had people refer to me here, there, as, this is Rabbi Landi. She's our newest rabbi, and then say, yeah, she's the female rabbi. It's like, and it wasn't said to be conniving or nasty. It was just they were trying to, I think, differentiate between, they were working something out internally with themselves.
You'll even hear women saying this.
And, yeah, absolutely. And so I certainly see myself as a feminist. That's been a big influence in me as a human being and me as a Jew. But that is not my starting point and my starting point in my identity. We talked about this last week. Like, how do I see myself, or a few weeks ago, how do I vote? How would I vote in the New York election as a Jew or as a woman? I think that we're getting to the postmodern version of, like, our gender is so important, but is not our most defining factor. Perhaps I'm naive. But when I have to talk about clothes in my rabbinate, and that's why I'm happy that we're speaking about this, but it also makes me a little bit uncomfortable that we're even addressing it at all. I all of a sudden become very aware of the fact that I'm a woman. On the other hand of that, I also say, okay, so I am perceived as a female rabbi. How do I take that in a way that's empowering to me? And that doesn't make me feel that I have to prove myself further. So I'm dealing with a lot of contradictory feelings regarding this topic.
If that's the case, I'm going to put another one on the table. Is that okay?
Sure.
I sometimes wonder, again, things we've discussed, if there isn't a double standard similar to what I would say in the music industry, and that is that it's hard to be a prominent female rabbi in America, to have your voice be widespread without having at least a certain level of how you present yourself, of being easier on the eyes.
There's so much sexism.
So much. And I don't think that's the same case for men. I think just like how in music you could look like Meatloaf or Jelly Roll, both named after foods, but actual people. You could be you could look like Billy Joel, and you could be a famous musician, and it's much harder to do so. The week that this podcast is coming out, the #1 movie, I'm sure, is going to be Wicked, in which two emaciated female actors are going to be held up as paradigms before young girls throughout our country. I think, again, that there is a much more forgiveness, and that male rabbis are able to have a larger, much more prominent voice without necessarily having the same visuals that the female rabbis, or just rabbis, I should say, for you, are held,
this female rabbis,
to which they're held. Would you agree, disagree? How do you feel about that?
I think that it's not just the physical, it's the whole package. I think that's, people today, I think, want a rabbi that resembles them in some ways, and that's comforting, and that is more relatable. And I can understand that. We're always drawn to people who are a little bit more like us. That's those are our people. And I was at a rabbinic conference speaking to female clergy colleagues about this very issue. How much do you I don't want to say give into the culture. How much do you take part in the culture of it, or how much do you keep that private? For instance, I have some friends who are rabbis who part of their rabbinate is they work out with the other moms in their community. It's their friend group, and it's their pastoral group, and it's a lot of things.
It makes them relatable as well.
Relatable. On the other hand, that's revealing a lot of their personal life and of their the intimate aspect of their relationship with their body.
And if you're contorting yourself and bending over, you're revealing a lot of, like, how you look, every inch of your body.
Absolutely. So for those friends of mine, they feel very empowered by being able to take part in those same spaces. I'm not there yet. But I do think that while this is a conversation that kind of makes my gut turn a little bit, it's definitely something that I think should be addressed and needs to be addressed. I mean, I look at the more successful, and again, success is not one thing, but more of the more known female rabbis, and yeah, there definitely is a connecting line between them. With they're very relatable, they present in a certain way, they speak in a certain way. I mean, I've become aware of the fact that people relate to me, and this is something that I've always been aware of, but not necessarily wanted to lean into, and I have leaned into it. The way that I've talked about being a mother to young children. And that's also about my presentation physically and verbally and emotionally. And it's revealing something of myself. But then I also think I get something in return for that. We get a common language and intimacy with other people. So it's, I think that any person, not just rabbis, we think about our image, we think about how we relate to other people, we think about what our strengths are, we think about how much is too much to reveal, how much is too much of a boundary to cross, how do we hold it, how do we keep ourselves holding on to the narrative and to into the power of the situation. Someone said to me a few weeks ago, when my child laid on the bima without shoes on, it wasn't you.
Wasn't me complaining, or wasn't me laying out on the field with the shoes off? Yeah.
Both of you, both of them. But they said to me, that was such an interesting and personable and relatable moment. And I turned bright red. They said, no, I really mean that. Like, it's important for me as your congregant to see that, your life can be a little bit hectic and messy sometimes too. And I said, I didn't think about that. I was more embarrassed in the moment than thinking that was a relatable moment. So I think that there's always an ebb and flow of what does the way that we present as rabbis and as leaders, what does that do in terms of helping our community? I'm curious, like, what do you choose to share and to reveal of yourself? Like, you are a rabbi who sometimes plays tennis and hangs out with community members and presents in a certain cool kind of way.
Thank you.
I mean, I think so. What is that thoughtful or?
Yeah. I mean, I think that when I came to Bethel, I think that both my vision for what the congregation could be and also what the need I heard from the congregational leadership was that we wanted this to be an inclusive, welcoming, and I hear the informal place to be. And I was only too happy to follow in that direction because I tend to be a rather informal type of person.
I didn't know that.
The fact that we come to work and, we are not dressed to the nines when we're here. I'm not wearing a suit and a tie. Even on Friday nights, I'm not wearing a tie on the bima because it's supposed to be inclusive, relax, come as you are. So there's a lot of intentionality that it just happens to dovetail very much with my natural predilection anyway. I want people to feel like they can be themselves when they're here. And so that's something I've done with a lot of thought. And even I started in one place maybe 11 years ago and have come a little bit more in terms of trying to make it less formal, but at the same time making sure that it's always respectful that way. The idea that going to the synagogue should require you to dress up like you're going to the country club. I don't go to country clubs much, but if you like that, I'm saying that you needed to get. I understand your idea of Kiddur mitzvah. I also understand that. I think this comes from my experience working in the corporate world before becoming a rabbi. I remember what it's like to slog through a week at the office. I remember what it's like on Friday afternoon to just be exhausted and frustrated and spending time in my cubicle. This is very much coming from my Gap experience. I remember just wanting to go to the synagogue as a peaceful place and wanting to plop down. I didn't want to put on fancy clothing. I didn't want to sing along. I didn't want to clap along. I just wanted a space and just wanted to be there. And I think I have a lot of empathy that way for our congregants. I understand for many of our congregants who are working, and many of them in high pressure environments and that they want to come and feel comfortable here. And I want them to feel like they're welcome that way. So it all goes to that same broader theme of trying to dissolve a lot of the barriers between the congregant and the clergy, feeling like a sense of connection that way. The things that you talk about, how you're observed as a mom and with kids and with all of the same issues that everyone else is going on, not having the voice of God resonate from on high. I think that's where our community's at. And I think I personally think that's really the future of because we need to ensure that if we sit around in our synagogues waiting for our congregants to come talk to us, there's never going to be that meeting. We have to find them where they are at. We have to meet and have coffee together, go on walks together. Yeah. I'm not going to bend over backwards and do yoga with someone. I'm not going to bend over backwards to do yoga, period. But I think that the approachability factor is so important. And that for me, the idea that a rabbi is, there's no pope in Judaism. We are fallible, regular people with all of the same mistakes and issues as everybody else. I think that is empowering to our congregants to hear, to know that we can understand them because there's no difference.
Yeah, I always like hearing your intentional vision of the community and how you brought it from one place to another place. That was certainly one of the reasons that I felt comfortable here. You know, coming from Israel, you have your fancy pair of jeans.
Yes. That's why I like being in Israel so much.
And,
yes.
That's how people show up anywhere.
Including weddings.
Including at my wedding, where I said no one can come in their jeans, and then
they came in sweatpants. No.
50 people came in their fancy jeans because those are two different yes. categories. And I get that.
God, they were betrayed.
I think that it's so important to meet people where they are. I do think that one of the concepts that's really beautiful theologically for me is like having a sense of awe and humility towards God and towards the places that you are. And so I like certain presentations in order to create that environment. I think when you get dressed up for the high holidays, when you get dressed up for Shabbat, when you get dressed up for Shabbat dinner, when you get dressed up for certain moments, it goes back to the priests. You're meeting the moment with your dress. I could also contradict myself 10,000 times with that and say, yeah, but you're right. Like, let's just show up as we are, and then we'll focus on the things that are inside of us. But while you were talking, I was thinking about one moment that I truly, and this is going to be shocking to you, that I truly felt, I was very aware of myself as a woman and in my body. I was pregnant with Shaya, who's now 4, and I was very pregnant in the Israeli heat, and a congregant came up to me after services and felt very close with me, and then he put his hand on my stomach and just left it there for a moment. And I looked at him, and he looked back at me, and he goes, oh man, I don't know why I did that. I'm so sorry. And I said, he recognized it. And I said, you know what? Like, that was a lot for me, and we're gonna move on, and I'm gonna be forgiving. But it also made me aware of, it's not just how I present physically, it's also like gender roles certainly serve, they do exist in a community. People treat me as a daughter, people treat me as a mother, people treat me as a sister, people sometimes treat me as a woman in society and lower me and all sorts of different ways. But I think it's important not just being the coach on the side and helping the team get to where they need to get to, but also being aware of what is the pastor and what is the prophet, what role do we play in people's lives, and how does the way that we go about in our community, how does that meet people, how does that affect people, how does that help people?
Right. Several years ago, at the high holidays, I gave a sermon about how female rabbis are addressed, and talked specifically about Rabbi Linzer at the time. This is before you came here, and ways that people would call her by her first name, and then they'd say, the other day I was in a meeting, I was there with Mara and Rabbi Jaffe, and people would call that out. And when people say about female rabbis, oh, I love that rabbi, she's so cute, rather than she's so thoughtful, articulate, knowledgeable, that I think a lot of these are just patterns of behavior that are hard to break over time. I think that we need to. Your example of the Israeli wedding, I want to give you the counterpart here for a second. And another reason why I'm so thankful for this congregation. Years ago, my fourth year internship for rabbinical school was in Las Vegas, and I loved it. I went out to synagogue near Tamid in Las Vegas, and one weekend when I was going out there, yeah, I was coming with me, and they had their big annual sisterhood event, and the sisterhood event was an wear pink, everyone wear pink event. Now, you know my wife, and I don't know many Israeli women who have a heavy pink wardrobe.
Yeah.
So she had to go out, and what a good sport Yael was for putting on pink and wearing it to this event and just wanting to get the hell out of there as fast as possible. It was an odd event anyway. The level to which at this synagogue, our congregants are understanding and provide space, privacy. There's not the expectation that the rabbi's wife is like the first lady of the synagogue, which honestly, at some synagogues, that's really what it's called, the first lady, and has to sit there in the front row or on the bima and has to be prim and proper. The fact that we have our kids here and they could be running around between the classrooms, there is a genuine welcoming back towards us of being regular human beings. And I'm so thankful for that. I would hate it if we had an event here in which, your husband or someone had to come and to put on something that made them feel really uncomfortable and be a part of something or feel like they had a job because they are the significant other. Thank God for that privacy in that space.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to call Omer out here, my husband. Every time we go to synagogue, he always starts by asking, is this a Gene event?
He's Israeli, of course. And do you say it's a nice Gene event or a regular Gene event?
Well, I say, show me which genes you're thinking about. And then I always nix it.
At least he asks. He knows to ask.
He knows to ask. Last thing, because I know we have to wrap up, is that, clothes do create boundaries. And boundaries are something that have come up a lot in our conversations about ritual and about Judaism and about particularism. And I think that one of the reasons that I'm so, I don't want to say fixated, but I'm thoughtful about my clothing is because I think that, it's important for a rabbi to maintain certain boundaries with their community in their role, meaning I'm going to dress one way when I'm private Leora, and I want to present another way when I'm here at the synagogue. And sometimes there's a lot of overlap.
Right.
Often there's overlap, but if I'm in a moment, if I go to Shiva, for instance, I want to come dressed in a way that people know that there's someone in charge and someone who knows what's going on and is being respectful and has come to this moment with a certain level of yira, with awe and with respect. And so just as our clothes can be a reflection of our personality, which we didn't even talk about, and of fashion and of expression, they also serve another purpose of saying, okay, I'm here and I know what I got to do right now. And I've thought about that to be here intentionally in this moment with you.
Yeah, I think that's lovely. I'm going to defer to you again here. I think we've talked a lot about presentability and also different standards when it comes to men versus women. I'm wondering if I could put you on the spot just for a moment, if you had advice to congregants about when it comes to addressing female clergy, what would you say?
Oh, first of all, however you're going to treat the male at the synagogue, if there is a male at the synagogue, a male clergy person, make sure that you're using the same kind of terminology with a woman than you are with a man. That's number one. Number two, please never comment on looks. It's not something that
even if it's a compliment, correct?
It's a good question. I think it depends on your relationship with that person. If you have no relationship with the clergy person, I don't think any comment on looks is going to be appropriate. If you have a relationship with them and you have a rapport, that's something more intimate and personal and per the moment. And I think just treat people with the same kind of respect treat the rabbi with the same kind of respect that you would treat any of your friends, any of your colleagues, anywhere else. I might need to write about that more. I need to reflect on that a little bit more. That's an interesting question.
Every years ago, again, working at the synagogue in San Francisco, one of the admin assistants, we had a rapport. We worked very closely together. We were offices next to each other. And one day she wore a particular pair of boots. I'm like, oh, those are some rocking boots you got there.
Yeah.
And she complained about me, and she said it made her feel uncomfortable in the moment. No, and it was a teachable moment for me that we have to be very, very careful with these things. And even there's sometimes at the office where I may be the only male around, and you guys are talking about you guys the regular commenting on each other, and I remind myself of that moment, just like you should stay in your lane last time.
Yes. Look at you. We'll strip you down.
Which is good. I said I work. I go to the office where I'm surrounded by articulate and very outspoken women, and then I go home and I am surrounded by very articulate and outspoken women. So I am put in my place well, but really just being very careful around these things, because I think that sometimes, even I'm going to speak here, whether it's as a congregant or as a coworker, we may come to things with the best of intentions, but the way we say things may land on people in ways that are very much unintended.
To wrap it up, there's a few social media accounts right now that are about the way that rabbis dress. I'm not even.
This is good news to our congregants. They can check these out.
Yeah, and it's about rabbis, clergy empowering themselves, and feeling competent and pretty and powerful and whatever the adjectives are that those rabbis want to feel. But it's taking something that sometimes is a little bit taboo to talk about and owning it. And so I think that I'm feeling very thankful that we're talking about this at this moment. Not because I want to get myself on a social media account. Stay tuned. No, but because I think that there is some taboo around it, and in order to break that taboo or to own it, it's important that we talk it through.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time and for explaining it to me.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Thanks for joining us on In Such a Time. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Landi, or to connect with Temple Bethel of Northern Westchester, visit bethelnw.org, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Temple Bethel NW. Thanks for listening.